There are many important things that go into me being me. In the text on page 73, it states the term identity is used as a self-image that we derive from family, gender, cultural, ethnic, and individual socialization processes. I have many identities, cultural values, and intercultural boundary crossings. I'll discuss these as well as briefly explaining things that go into how I was raised, which in turn helped me learn how to raise my son. I have many identities. For starters, I'm a white American. Another identity I have is I have been into running for a long time. In high school, I was on the cross-country team and absolutely loved it. When I was having a rough or stressful day, I would go on a run and calm down, and it always worked and helped me think and clear my mind. My professional identity is being in the military. My job is aircrew flight equipment. I get to work on life-saving equipment for the jets and aircrew members on a daily basis and feel my job is very rewarding and strive to do better than the best at my job. I am also a student. I have always wanted to be a nurse since I can remember, and I feel I can achieve this someday no matter what I go through to make it happen. On page 75, it discusses family systems and types. My family is a blended family and practice the positional family system. The text states that the blended family refers to the merging of different family systems from previous marriages. For us, we have my husband, myself, my son, and I have, which is from a previous marriage, and our daughter will be here any day now. My husband and I see my son as his, since my son's father is not in his life, and when someone says he looks just like my husband, he says thank you. He's very happy to have my son in his life and loves that everyone thinks of him as his. The text also talks about how the positional family emphasizes communal meanings, ascribed roles and statuses between parents and child, and family role conformity. My husband and I will teach our kids everything they need to know, but once they learn the rules, we expect them to follow them with no questions asked, or there will be consequences. This can be done from a young age through verbal and nonverbal communication. On page 119, it states that nonverbal communication is defined as the message exchange process involving the use of non-linguistic and paralinguistic cues that express through multiple channels in a particular sociocultural setting. Non-linguistic cues can include nonverbal eye contact, smiles, touch and gestures, or even silence, while paralinguistic cues refers to the tone of voice, pitch, or volume of sounds that accompany a verbal message. When it comes to nonverbal cues, we teach our children from a young age that it's okay to express their feelings verbally and nonverbally. My son, at a young age, was taught enough sign language so we would understand what he was saying, and he showed a variety of different facial expressions. It made it much easier for us to understand him. As he got older, we taught him words, choosing not to use baby talk, as we wanted him to learn to talk correctly. We taught him not to yell, and the pitch of his voice that would show attitude towards us was not okay. My family also taught me the same way. I was the first taught to sign and then talk and use my words, and expected not to have an attitude. I was raised in a traditional family, though, as I had my 4 siblings, and my mom and dad were always there. Within every family, though, there will be conflict. On page 173, it discusses conflict goal issues. It states that there are 3: content, relational, and identity. On page 174, it discusses that content goals means the practical issues that are external to the individuals involved. An example of this for me would be that my husband and I tend not to agree on the age of our children will get baptized, who will be their godparents, and such. This is hard, even though we were raised as the same religion. We were also raised in different churches that believe baptism should be done at different ages. The text also discusses relational conflict, which refers to how individuals define the particular relationship or would like to define it in the interactive situation. For my husband and I, he used to be very private about his life, and I was very open. This was hard because I wanted to talk to him and him talk to me and be open. This took a long time to achieve and is very important for a relationship to work. Communication is key. On page 175, it discusses identity-based goals, which are face-honoring and face-saving issues. With the self-respect, it is very important. For a while, my husband truly could not deal with any type of conflict, so it was hard to be constructive and handle the issue at hand, but eventually we were able to talk about what is important to us and resolve our issues. I learned about how he deals with things, and he learned about how I do, and in turn our relationship became stronger. On page 50 of our text, it states that we have 4 major cultural values. These values include individualism, collectivism, power distance, uncertainty avoidance, and feminine masculinity. On page 51, it states that individualism refers to the broad value tendencies of culture, emphasizing the importance of individual identity over group identity, individual rights over group rights, and individual needs over group needs. Collectivism refers to the broad value tendencies of culture and emphasizing the importance of we identity over I identity, group rights over individual rights, and in-group needs over individual wants and desires. I feel I value collectivism because I care a lot about others. While I strive to be the best I can, my goal in life is to help others, which is why I want to be a nurse someday. For power distance, there's small and large. On page 55, it states, in small power distance cultures, they tend to value equal power distributions, equal rights and relations, and equitable rewards and punishments based on performance, while large power distance cultures tend to accept unequal power distributions, hierarchical rights, asymmetrical roles, and rewards and punishments based on age, rank, status, title, and seniority. I feel when it comes to my family now and how I was raised, I value the large power distance. I was taught to obey and respect my family and elders and teach my son the same way. We put my son in timeout if he talks back, and we are not okay with this. On page 57, it discusses how there is a weak and strong uncertainty. Weak uncertainty avoidance encourages risk-taking and conflict approaches modes, while strong uncertainty avoids culture prefer clear procedures and conflict avoidance behaviors. While my family let me explore and I let my son, I feel that I value strong uncertainty most. Values are expected to be followed for my family and rules, and they were for me as well. When I was younger as well. On page 58, it discusses how femininity pertains to societies in which social gender roles are fluid and can overlap, meaning whatever women can do, men can do, and masculinity pertains to societies in which gender roles are clearly complementary and distinct. I strongly value femininity. I believe men and women should be treated equally. On page 66, it discusses independent and interdependent self-control. Well, I feel I am independent in a way. I feel I am unique and have been raised this way. I also feel as though I'm interdependent because I also strive to fit in, especially when it comes to work. On page 86, it discusses how cultural identity salience refers to the strength of affiliation we have with our larger culture. I truly feel I belong to my larger cultural group. I have learned about my culture my whole life, and other cultures have adapted well. I feel I have been well educated on my ethnical racial identity. On page 93, it discusses crossing boundaries. It states the intersection of culture, communication, and identity holds hope for improving and fine-tuning our understanding of crossing boundaries. This is very true, and growing up I learned a lot about this as I traveled across the country and learned about different states, countries, and cultures. I truly believe the diversity I got through my life has taught me to strive. I have learned so much about my identity and culture as well as many others. It has taught me to communicate well with others and care for others no matter what their culture, race, or ethnicity are. In turn, I've taught my family this way as well, and in some, this is me.